Ladies and gentlemen, what Charlie Sheen has done through this radio show and through you spreading the word is put 9/11 Truth front and center on the eve of 9/11, the 8-year anniversary of that staged terror attack. And as Webster has said many times, we must take the tool of false flag terror and we must expose it. We must break it in front of their faces, to quote him. We must inoculate the public to understand psychologically and intellectually how staged terror attacks work. Or the establishment will continue to stage attacks over and over and over again to get their agenda through. Webster, the foundation left was always there to control the left so that wars and the movements against wars could be hamstrung. Now I have the George Soros Media Matters and all the other publications he openly is the #1 funder of, along with the Rockefeller Foundation, attacking me, saying there's no youth corps, no youth brigades, there's no police state, there's no Northcom. I mean, just total lying and deception. How long can this work? How long can they keep the anti-war movement pacified as Obama admittedly takes 50,000 troops, as I said, out of Iraq, puts them in Afghanistan, and then puts 50,000 more contractors in Iraq, actually boosting the number, and then sends a bunch of contractors to Afghanistan? I mean, this is a massive ballooning in the war, and the average liberal bumbling around out there thinks the war is over.
Well, the question of how long they can get away with it is the question of when will a mass movement to stop it emerge, because that's the only way that these things are going to happen. Thanks to Charlie Sheen coming forward with this, and thanks to Cindy Sheehan, we've got the Sheen-Sheehan cooperation, I think, going on. You've got a revival of the anti-war movement, and now we've got the revival of the 9/11 Truth movement. But the question is, what is that going to lead to? Obama is literally getting away with unbelievable crimes, and the difference, of course, is that he does it all under left cover, not under the overtly racist militarist slogans of Bush and Cheney. But the question is, that's got to be translated into boots on the ground. In other words, I think the big thing we would need now is obviously whatever can be done this week to commemorate 9/11 to keep this question alive. But I think the larger thing as the autumn goes on is in October, November, there are various peace demonstrations, anti-Afghan war demonstrations scheduled here for Washington, among other things. The problem is we've got one group wants to come to town on October 5th and 6th, which I think turns out to be a Monday. And, of course, if you want to have a serious demonstration, you've got to have it on a Saturday so people can come to it. So I think what you've got is some of these anti-war organizations are trying to cover themselves, saying, yeah, well, we had a demonstration, but not enough people came, except that they're scheduling it on Monday when they know very well that most people can't come because most people have to work. So I think what we've got to press for is mass action to end these wars, but again, get rid of this crippling flaw which we had previously in 06 and 07, which was that the anti-war movement refused to entertain 9/11 Truth, at least at the level of the leaders, and bring these back together so that the question of forcing the U.S. out of Afghanistan and Iraq is completely merged with 9/11, because, again, it's the premise, it's the reason that Bush always cited, and now Obama has cited it again. That speech in Phoenix about 2.5 weeks ago was unbelievable. He was channeling Bush and Cheney. This was his biggest public embrace of the 9/11 myth, which was something that he stayed away from. He previously wanted to cultivate his left cover much more, but this time he came out and it was a stunning embrace of the entire bankrupt reasoning of Bush and Cheney. And
well, let me ask you a question here, though, Webster. We see all these 9/11 Truth hit pieces in National Geographic, PBS, you name it, coming out. We see all these hit pieces in the news. We see the going after Van Jones, not for all the legitimate bad things he wanted, but on 9/11 Truth to create a peer pressure illusion that 9/11 Truth is very unpopular, when in the polls show it's the opposite. So the establishment is attacking 9/11 Truth now more than it's done the last 3-4 years. Why do you think that's happening now? I think and I know it's because they realize it is a real substantive challenge. They hoped it would fully dissipate when Bush left, and it was only kind of a leftist angle, which it wasn't from its foundation. It was populist against Bush, but instead it continued to grow and get more scholarly and scientific. So I see the establishment seeing it as a major threat.
Well, it's a major threat because Obama needs it more to maintain his reasoning around Afghanistan. In other words, Obama is now the warmonger that we always said he was. In other words, he ran as a warmonger. He promised the unilateral bombing of Pakistan, the invasion of Pakistan, in effect, and he promised to escalate the Afghan war, and he's now doing that, and this is turning into a disaster. In other words, the casualties in July were the worst that they've been in the whole 8 years since 9/11, and now August is even worse, and September is presumably going to be even worse than August. You've got photographs of soldiers getting killed. You've got this horrendous tanker truck bombing incident. So this entire policy is in tremendous crisis. As Obama gets weaker and weaker in his ability to justify the slaughter, Obama's going to have to go back and say, well, remember, the reason for this is 9/11. And that's what he did in Phoenix. He said, if we don't occupy Afghanistan and defeat the Taliban, then there will be a new 9/11. So Obama has announced a new 9/11 in that unbelievable Phoenix speech. So the only way that you can stop that, again, is to refute it. I would point above all to this question of MIHOP. In other words, I think this has become clearer over the years. There are various schools of 9/11 analysis, and the only one that gets you anywhere is the MIHOP one, the made it happen on purpose. In other words, intelligence community networks, privately controlled, but crisscrossing the agencies of the federal government, right? Reaching from the Pentagon to the DIA to the CIA to the NSA to the FBI and so forth, as has been shown in a number of studies, including my own and your work too. This is where it came from. In other words, this came from the bowels of the U.S. intelligence community and not from some crazy cave in the Hindu Kush. That's the only knowledge that's worth anything.
Let me tell you about what... Sure, go ahead.
All the other approaches, whether you believe in the official version or you have unanswered questions or you believe in blowback, which is what Obama went with at the time, right? If you look in my book, my Obama biography, Obama wrote about 9/11, in the immediate aftermath, and what he said about it was more or less what Jeremiah Wright said, was that it was your blowback, it was your punishment.
Chicken's coming home to roost.
Yeah, it's your punishment for being an imperialist. In other words, you bomb them, they bomb you. And the problem is that's not how it happened. That's just not true. It didn't come from them.
Okay,
or IHOP. In other words, the people who say somebody let it happen on purpose. This is all the same, ultimately. There's no difference in any of that, because it all assumes that there really is a terror organization. They really want to come and kill you, and they can if you let them, so you better fight them or fight them better or whatever it is. So it came out of the intelligence community of the United States through maneuvers, through drills. And my count on the drills, which I've updated some months ago, it's 25-plus drills happening on 9/11, recently concluded or in advanced stages of preparation. So that's how you begin looking for what's going to happen next.
Webster, can you hear me?
Sure.
Okay, I wanted to make sure you can hear me. I wanted to shift gears. The establishment is definitely threatened by our Charlie Sheen event because we were later sent internal emails and things. I'm not going to give the folks attention that big online so-called, conspiracy type websites were coordinating, saying attack Alex Jones, attack this Sheen thing, telling their minions to do it, and then telling them to kind of misrepresent, and even going with slogans against me. And we saw this within hours of us launching the Charlie Sheen story. So there is no doubt that the establishment is threatened by this. Congratulations. I think, it's a badge of honor to be so high on their enemies list, because they do have an enemies list, right? We're back to Nixon, right? You can say Obama brings together the economy of a Carter, the lost wars of an LBJ, but also the internal security practices and secret intelligence dirty tricks of a Nixon. Obviously, as this all deteriorates, in other words, the economy is linked to Afghanistan, and that's obviously practically the same thing as
as 9/11 truth. As all of the lies begin to deteriorate and the credibility of this whole regime collapses, then I think a lot of that is going to fall away. And, you know, that famous progression, right? First they ignore you, then they ridicule you, then they attack you, and so forth, right? So you're moving along that continuum.
Well, that brings me to my next point. There openly are setting up national forced conscription operations. It's in the bills. It's in the announcements. The Girl Scouts to work under FEMA in anti-terror, leading the families, so our little girls. And then they say the Boy Scouts in the New York Times are training to, quote, take on disgruntled veterans with guns and seek and destroy. And then they're also openly announcing that they have Green Brigade kids that are going home from school, telling their mothers they, quote, can't have a hot bath, their carbon footprint's too big. I mean, they're pulling all the stops out.